Good evening
Yes,
again,
no.
ladies and gentlemen.
Wait, let me see. Oh, my
My
laptop's muted. Okay, perfect. I can hear you now. Sorry, my laptop was
yeah.
muted, so I couldn't hear anything.
So yeah, guys, greetings again. My name is Andile Mkungo, a 50 medical student from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. I'm part of the Internship SA, and today we have Dr. Maki, all the way from Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. Doc, can you please briefly introduce yourself to us, please?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Magabongwe Kaseke, but I go by Maki. I'm currently a second year intern at Charlotte Maxeke Hospital in Johannesburg. I studied at Stellenbosch University and I graduated in 2022. And yeah, a year and a half in, almost done, and currently applying for ComServe, as I think a lot of you guys are applying for your internship next year.
Thank you so much. Like that was a dope introduction. Thank you so much, Doug. So Doug, I think we can now start with our interview. So the first thing that we want to know about is the work environment. Before the work environment, we want to know, how did you choose Charles Maxeke? Was it part of your five choices or was not a part of your five choices? Was it your first choice or was it your last choice? Like, how did you choose your choices, your five choices, and how did you get the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital?
Okay, thank you so much for the question, Andile. So I always wanted to go to Charlotte. It was like my first choice, no matter what. I did my electives here in fourth year and fifth year, but kind of both in fourth year at the time. And so I asked a lot of people about how they applied, how to make sure Charlotte was the priority, if that is your priority hospital. And so the advice I got was from an intern that was at Charlotte, and I'll give you guys the exact same advice that she gave me. So at the time, we could apply to like an unlimited number of provinces, an unlimited number of priorities. So it's a bit different from now, but I think you can kind of still follow the same system. So my first choice was Charlotte. Then my second choice was Leratong. And the reason why the intern recommended I put Leratong is because it's not really popular. Or no, it is very popular actually. So I'm less likely to get it because they take less interns. So Charlotte takes a lot more interns than Leratong. So if I put that as first and then Leratong as second, it's more likely that I would have gotten Charlotte. And then my other three choices, I think I put Worcester in the Western Cape as third. I put Rob Ferreira in Mpumalanga as fourth. And then my fifth one, I think might have been Frere Hospital in East London, but I'm not too sure about that. But I know I had an East London option in there as well. Obviously, this year you guys are doing like a 3-1-1 or a 2-2-1 system. So ideally, if you want a Gauteng hospital, put the first three options as being Gauteng and then do the one and the one in another two provinces. That's just my advice. But yeah, so that's how I applied when I did my application.
Thank you so much, Doug, for that. So the other thing that we want to know about is the work environment of the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. But before you get to the work environment of Charlotte Maxeke Hospital, can you like briefly tell us about the environment around the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital, like the area, where is the Charlotte Maxeke located? Is it in Joburg, Pretoria, Soweto, where is it? And then after that, you can just take us through the work environment.
Okay, perfect. So Charlotte is a priority three hospital. It's a tertiary slash quaternary hospital in central Johannesburg, but it's not like central Johannesburg in terms of CBD, town, Jeppe Street, like that sort of area. It's quite close to Hillbrow and quite close to Joburg CBD. It's very close to Braamfontein, which is why the Wits Academic Medical Campus is the site because it is adjacent to Braamfontein and therefore adjacent to Hillbrow and those areas, but it is centered in Parktown. So the address of Charlotte Maxeke Hospital is in Parktown in Johannesburg. It's really, really well located, in my personal opinion. You're kind of 10 minutes from a lot of places. You're 10 minutes from Rosebank, I think about 15 minutes from Sandton. We work in secondary at a lot of other clinics that are close to the area, but not really in this area. So you work at Hillbrook Clinic, which is 10 minutes away from the hospital itself. You work at Alex, which is about 20 minutes away. You work at Southland, which is also about 20 minutes away. It's quite well located as well in terms of access to highways and freeways. And because it is in the like center of Johannesburg, it's quite easy to get like Ubers and Taxifys and stuff to move around, even if you don't have a car. So quite central to Johannesburg. You're basically 20 minutes from everything, 30 minutes from most things. I think you're an hour away from Pretoria, probably 30 or so minutes away from Soweto. Yeah, so it's quite central, Gauteng. And then in terms of the actual area, so it is Johannesburg, so there are obviously safety things that you should be concerned about no matter where you are. I'm quite fortunate. I stay in the doctor's quarters, which is actually right next to the hospital, so I walk to work every day, which I find super convenient. It's a 100-meter walk every day. It doesn't take the life out of you. It's quite a safe street. It is policed by like the security guards and stuff. That being said, you still have to be mindful of stuff. You can't like walk around with your phone and stuff on the street. Clear safety things that you think about anywhere else in South Africa. And yeah, that's the general area. It's also, the hospital is adjacent to the med campus. I think most university med campuses are attached in some way to a hospital. So Charlotte Maxeke is the one that is attached to the Wits Medical School. So the medical school is literally right next door to the actual hospital. And then the doctor's quarters and the accommodations are also right next door to the hospital. So it's like quite well located in that sense. And then I think I'll just go into the environment within the hospital. So I keep saying Tygerberg, Charlotte Maxeke Hospital is quite a big hospital. It's more long than I'd say it is tall. So it's about 5 floors tall in total from the ground floor that you walk on the road. But it is quite long. Apparently, allegedly, it's about 500 meters long. So it's quite a long stretch of hospital that you're walking through every day. And then there's different blocks, and different blocks mean different things. It's color-coded, which is very exciting for people that love color-coding stuff. And the hospital has a lot of consultants, a lot of registrars, because it is Wits adjacent, so it's a teaching hospital. And then they also get medical students as well. But the medical students actually are mostly primarily located at Barra. So we get some medical students, but not a lot of medical students at Charlotte. And then there's also the interns, lots of nursing staff, lots of porters, clerical staff, like they have pretty much all, like every department that you think of having at a hospital, they have it. And they also have a lot of staff working in the hospital. So there's probably like over 1,000 people working at this hospital every single day. And then, yeah, that's the hospital and the environment and within the hospital, how that works.
Thank you so much, Doc, for that. Now can we get into the rotations, since you said that you are in you are in a second year internship. So can you please take us through from the first rotation that you did when you arrived at Charlotte Maxeke to the one that you are currently doing now? Just give us a brief summary of how are the calls in each rotation, how is the teaching, and everything about each rotation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Andile, for that question. So I think the rotation system is the same throughout internship at all the hospitals because it is HPCSA regulated. But in first year, you'll do 4 rotations. You do pediatrics, internal medicine, surgery, and obstetrics and gynecology. And then in your second year, you do 6 months of family medicine. You do orthopedics, anesthetics, and psychiatry. So in terms of the first year rotations, the calls you do are pretty much the same around all the rotations. The busiest call-based rotation we had was obstetrics and gynecology. You do about 4 to 5 calls a month. I think at some point people were doing 6 to 7 calls a month, which does become quite a lot. With our hospital, you aren't split into obstetrics and gynecology, but you can do specific obstetrics calls and you do specific gynecology calls. And sort of every day is very random. Every day is very different. You're not assigned in a particular area for like a month or a week at a time. It just goes as it goes. So you could do 3 obstetrics calls and 2 gynecology calls in 1 month, and then you can do 5 gynecology calls and 2 obstetric calls in another month. You do that for 3 months. It's a really nice environment. I think they do try to teach a lot. They have academic, well, not academic, but ward rounds every single morning where you sort of run through the statistics of the previous day. They ask a lot of academic questions in those sessions. So it's really nice to understand how department meetings work, how an M&M would actually function, and like a morbidity and mortality meeting. Really interesting to see that in the obstetrics department, especially because it is such a high-risk department to work in, litigation-wise and all that. You kind of see the discussion and the thought processes of a lot of consultants when you have that, that time. The obstetrics department also does try to teach a lot in the ward rounds that they have. So the ward rounds are very academic at times, but obviously depends on the ward that you're in. Sometimes you will not have a ward round and you're an intern working in a ward alone, versus other wards where you might have a ward round because of the dynamic that ward round has, or that ward has. And then obstetrics works in a very particular fashion. Like I said, you're in a different department every day, or like a different ward every single day. There's about 8 obstetrics and gynecology wards, and there's about 10 or 12 interns at a time. So it's usually 1 intern per ward. You kind of do work related to that ward. So the registrars might see patients in some wards and then give the intern the list of the work to do at that time. Whereas in other wards, the interns are expected to see all the patients in the ward. It's usually the postnatal wards that they trust us more to see. So you see women after cesarean sections, after vaginal deliveries that have had complications, and then you discharge them and you treat them accordingly. And then on the calls for obstetrics, you work on the floor. So you work in the obstetrics admissions area. So you are working with the midwives. You do like PVs, you examine patients. Patients might come in with non-obstetric issues necessarily. So it might just be a woman who is pregnant who also has a STI, and then you have to sort of treat the STI because she's pregnant. You can't really do that at a clinic. You have to treat that at a bit of a higher level. And then there's also a labor ward, but we don't actually deal with the normal vaginal deliveries in the labor ward. The midwives take care of those unless there's complications. So the complications you're thinking of are things like a pregnant mom with twins, or like an impacted twin, or triplets. We had a triplet delivery in the labor ward. Wasn't ideal, but it has happened, and you kind of have to manage that as the doctor on call. But usually, as an intern, you're not expected to manage that yourself. You have a registrar on call with you, and they usually take on the higher level issues. And then on calls in obstetrics, they also cut Caesars. So that's really nice. So you get to assist in Caesars. You also get to learn how to do Caesars. A call is a very tricky time to learn how to do a Caesar, because you don't really want to do your first Caesar at 1 a.m. on like a Tuesday morning, but they do kind of give you time to learn the procedures, learn how to sew, learn how to stitch, learn how to close, that sort of thing. So you kind of learn those systems. Gynecology is pretty much the same. It's 1 intern and a registrar. Your registrar, you kind of ask all the questions. You're never left alone. I think that's the big thing about CMJAH. That I try to emphasize, that you're never left completely alone. You always have some form of supervision. Some people might like that, some people might not, because you might want to be more independent. But I also think that coming from where I came from, which is Stellenbosch, which does teach a lot of independence, I really, really appreciated still having some supervision and still having someone to tell me what I'm doing wrong, why I'm doing that wrong, and what I can improve on. You know, if you are left to be completely independent from the go, you can also learn a lot of bad habits, which we don't want, because then you become bad doctors in the end. Okay, I've gone into a lot of depth about obs and gynae, so I'll just run through the other ones very quickly. Pediatrics, similar system. I think we had about 4 to 5 calls again in pediatrics. Really nice department. I think it's the best department at CMJAH that I've worked in besides psychiatry. Really happy people, really helpful people. They really are doctors of babies, which is really nice. You learn a lot, very kind souls, very kind supervisors. You do 6 weeks of neonates, and I think 6 weeks of general pediatrics. The neonates time is quite tough. We are a tertiary center, so we do see really, really small neonates. And you learn how to manage them, manage their infections, manage their comorbidities. it is a very academic environment in neonates, but they try to teach you, but you also get the opportunity to teach your fellow team members. So everyone has to do a presentation once a week on a random topic. You get your presentation. I think I did mine on NEC in neonates, which is quite interesting. I learned a lot in the time that I was preparing the presentation, and they learned a lot from hearing me talk about it. So it's very academic, very cool. And again, you always have support. You're never going to be left alone with a baby, not knowing what to do. Like, you always have that support. And I think it's really essential, especially when you're still a developing doctor, to have that kind of support. Internal medicine and surgery are two of my least favorite rotations. I have said this to the people in the department, so it's not a secret. Internal medicine is internal medicine everywhere. CMJAH, however, is different in that because it's a quaternary facility, they don't have general internal medicine. So I think at a lot of our medical schools, when you have internal medicine rotations, you sort of just admit everyone. And like, you can have a cardiac patient, a rest patient, a GIT patient, and they're all in one unit of patients. Some just very regimented and very specialized. So we do not have a general internal medicine admissions. We have RESP and cardiology and infectious diseases and GIT and hematology. Like, it's all very specified. And so how the calls work is that as the intern, there's 2 interns on call a night, and you cover 5 of the different subspecialties. So as one intern, you'll cover infectious diseases, RESP, GIT, hematology, and oncology, as an example, right? Then the other intern will cover the other 5. So they'll cover cardio, endo, like rheumatology, those sorts of subspecialties. And then you basically, as an intern, you work primarily in the wards. So if the wards need like a transfusion started, if they need bloods given, if they need bloods taken, if they need drips done, that's kind of what you call for. You also work with the registrars to help them book beds for patients and make sure that their patients can leave the emergency department and go up to the wards. It's very seldom that the interns actually do clerk patients in internal medicine from the ED side, which does make it quite tricky. You don't really learn as much in that department, but depending on the specialties that you're given, you might learn a bit more. So you get, as an intern, there's again 10 or 12 of you, and you're split into individual specialties. So because it's 3 months long, you change specialties every single month. You get a specialty per month. So I did rheumatology for a month. I did infectious diseases for a month. And what was my third one? I did oncology for a month. I learned a lot in rheumatology. It's a single intern specialty. So I was the only intern there. I did clinics. I saw patients in clinic. I prescribed methotrexate and all sorts of weird steroids. I did osseous steroids. I gave steroids in joints. I did all those really cool things. It's very nice. You get to learn quite a lot. Same goes for the other specialties. It's very niche and very specialized, but you do learn a lot in the field that you're in. Obviously, if you are interested in a very specific field, so like let's say you're interested in neurology, you can ask the department head or your fellow interns to get time in neurology. So you swap a specialty with them. That is allowed, especially because people do have particular interests in things that they are interested in terms of internship. And then surgery. Surgery is a much more different system. You are split into 2 groups in surgery. There's 2 different wards, and one ward is more chill than the other ward, but it's still quite a lot of work. Lots of booking scans, lots of work in that sense. We don't really see our own patients in surgery, again, because they are very niche, very high level complications that these patients have. And so it is really focused on registrar teaching and registrar learning. And so for that reason, you do sort of get left with a lot of the ward work for these patients. So like booking scans, taking bloods, doing drips, doing that sort of stuff. And it is quite time consuming. A lot of people had very bad times in surgery at my department, in my hospital in particular. Like, some people started work at 6:30 and left at 8 p.m. Obviously, this does depend on your team and how your team works together. We never left at 8 p.m. We would come in 6:30 because that's the time that you start anyway, and we'd finish around 4 or 5. So depending on how your team works, you can really finish early and really move quickly. So surgery is a lot of teamwork, and that is really prevalent in how the department runs. And again, the calls, you do 4 to 5. I think we had some people actually got to do 3 or 4 calls in surgery, so that was actually quite nice. But it just depends on how many interns you have. So the calls you do really depends on the number of interns that are available to do calls. Then in second year, you do 6 months of family medicine, and then you do 2 months of 3 other rotations. So the 6 month of family medicine, There was a question that was also asked about if you need a car, if you need access to vehicles and stuff like that. This is the time that I think everyone really needs to know you need a car. I didn't know that coming into CMJAH, and you don't need to have a car, but I think it's very convenient to have your own vehicle when it comes to second year internship. I got a car quite early on in internship, but that's just because I felt like I really needed one and I wanted to be able to commute quite easily. That was a decision I made. Not everyone has to make the same decision. There are still interns that are working here that are same level as me, same second year interns that don't have cars and they Uber everywhere and it's much cheaper. So just understand what you're getting into when it comes to that. But in second year and FAMED, it's 6 months. You do 1 month at the CMJAH ED in the emergency department, which is actually really nice because, like I said, in internal medicine, you don't get to clerk your own patients like from scratch. You don't really get to work with patients. When you're in the ED, that's when you really do get to clerk patients from the get-go. Like they have nothing else besides a couple of symptoms, and you get to really decide what this patient has, what's wrong. You decide which specialty you're going to call, what tests you want to order, what scans you want to order. And it really is like your chance to be autonomous in that decision-making process, which I really like. So you do a month in CMJAH ED, then you do 2 months at Hillbrow CHC, 2 months at Alexandra CHC, and then you do 1 month at Southern Hospital, which is a district hospital. So Hillbrow is 10 minutes away from CMJAH. So if you live in the DQ, it's very convenient. It's 10 minutes. Some people walk there. Not the safest. I wouldn't recommend that, but people have done it and not died. And then Alexandra's 20 minutes away. That's in Sandton, Wynberg area. And then Southern Hospital is in the south of Joburg. It's in Rosettenville, and it's about 25 minutes away. So for those two hospitals, that's kind of when you really need a car because you're going there every single day. And it is quite time consuming. The drive itself is quite long. So you kind of need money for fuel if you are going to have a car. You can carpool if someone has a car and you guys want to drive together. It doesn't always work out that way. But yeah, and then each place you work in second year has its own vibe. So ED at CMJAH is very like evidence-based medicine, first line, very emergency type stuff, but very interesting as well. It's also the first time I interacted with psychiatric patients before they actually were in a psychiatric ward, which is quite cool. So you see a lot of like aggressive, uncontained psychiatric patients. You learn how to sedate people, which is really nice. You learn how to like treat basic like early on psychosis, treat basic things like cholecystitis and choledocholithiasis, and you learn how to interpret scans and scan reports, and it really is quite a learning time, which I really appreciated. South Rand is a district hospital, so they have less resources than CMJAH, but we refer to CMJAH. So when you're at South Rand and you have a problem with the patient, you can refer that patient to Joburg Gen. It's also really nice because if you build up good networks at CMJAH, which is where I started, and then I went to South Rand. CMJAH is short and click it, by the way. I keep saying CMJAH, that's the abbreviation. When you build up good networks, it's easier to refer patients because people actually trust your clinical judgment. They know that you're a good intern. They know that you have assessed the patient, and therefore when you're referring, you're making a point by referring, and it's not because of whatever reason you haven't seen the patient or whatever. And then Alexandra and Hillbrow are both clinics. Both very different vibes. Hillbrow is very intense, in my opinion. It sees about 500 to 600 patients a day at that clinic. It's unnecessarily ridiculously busy. Whereas Alexandra is a much more smaller community healthcare center and sees maybe 200 maybe 200 at maximum patients a day. So just different vibes, but you kind of get a good feel of that. I've only done psychiatry at the moment, so I can only tell you about psychiatry. Really nice department. I think second best department after the pediatrics department that I worked in last year. And you see patients, you have your own psychiatric patients, you get to know them, you get to know their psychosis, you know their depressive symptoms, you know anything. You don't have to challenge people, which is quite cool. And yeah, again, you do work at some peripheral clinics. So you work at Hillbrow and you work at JEP and you work at South Rand in psychiatry for a little bit. But again, there are interns who don't have cars. You don't need to have a car to get there, but just be prepared for the cost involved in Ubering or even having a car. But yeah, so that's that. On that, I haven't done anesthetics and I have not done orthopedics. So I can't tell you much about those.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That was so like deep and knowledgeable. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, Doc, now we wanna ask you about the DQ. Where is the SimJ DQ? Where is the SimJ DQ? Is it inside or outside the hospital? How much do you pay for the DQ? Is it inclusive of water and electricity? And also, is the DQ safe? The safety of DQ?
Okay, perfect. So the DQ, I stay in DQ, so I really love answering this question. It's part of very high on the list of reasons why I came to CMJAH initially. So the DQ is the building right next to the hospital, right next to the hospital's emergency department. There are securities inside the building, which makes it a lot nicer, it's a lot safer. So as you enter the building, there is a security guard waiting at the desk to sign people in that aren't actually guests or people that don't actually live in the doctor's quarters. The apartment, it's a single studio-sized apartment. It has a two-place stove and a private bathroom. It also comes with a miniature fridge. So if you don't have a fridge initially, it's really nice. So they give you a little fridge when you come in, and it has a working oven, two-place stove, and the space itself is quite big. So you can fit, I have a queen-sized bed, and I also have like a huge 140 centimeter desk and a TV stand. Some people have couches in their apartments. Like, you can't fit a lot of stuff. It's basically a studio flat. But the best things about it is the private bathroom. You don't share a bathroom with anyone. You don't share a kitchen area. It's all private. The cost of DQ is about 1,500 rand a month. I actually don't know. I've gotten my pay slips, but it comes off of your pay slip before you actually get your salary. So I've only ever gotten my salary with the price of DQ taken out. So I don't actually know what the full salary is without the cost of DQ. But the DQ itself is 979 rand a month. There's also like a cheap housing allowance that they pay extra, so that makes it about 1,500. And then the water and electricity component is only 35 rand. And so everything you use is basically within that 1,500 rand. You're not paying for extra water meters. You're not paying for extra access to anything or electricity. There is no fiber in the building. So if you want internet access, you have to get like an independent router. So a lot of people have to put up their own internet connections with the Wi-Fi router from a service provider. So a lot of people have Rain. I had Rain at a time. Now I have MTN. There's nothing that's perfect. They just get whatever you want in terms of internet packages. And then I do think it's quite safe. I saw someone on the comments asked about sleepovers. That is the one tricky thing about this doctor's quarters that you need to be aware of. So you need to apply to have a sleepover, which is quite a tricky, annoying process to go through. But once you get used to it, it's normal. So the application process involves filling in an application form about 3 days before the guest is meant to arrive. They are kind of nice and you fill it out like a day before, but it's not ideal. Ideally, 3 days before the guest is about to arrive, you fill in an application form. You need to have your ID number, the guest's ID number, and that sort of information. You fill out the form and it gets approved. And you can only have a guest stay for 3 days or 3 nights every 2 weeks. So it cannot be 3 nights in the same week or 3 nights in 2 different weeks. You can't have someone stay for a full week. It becomes a whole drama. And do not try to sneak guests in. It will end in tears. I know from personal experience. So it's 3 nights every 2 weeks. It's free. You don't pay extra for them to stay over, but it's just that they want to have it on record for some reason, and you have to fill out that application form. The tricky thing about the application form, which I must mention, is that you have to fill it out within working hours, so between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. And obviously, if you're in hospital at that time, it does make it quite tricky. So if you're at CMJAH and based at CMJAH, it's easy because it's like 100 meters away. You kind of like sneak out of hospital for like 30 minutes, go fill out the form during your lunch break, and then go back. And yeah, that helps quite a bit. And then how many sleepovers are allowed in a month? So it's going to be 2 sleepovers in a month because it's 3 nights every 2 weeks. So if there's 4 weeks in a month, you can only have 2 sleepovers at a time. They are not your friend. I will say this. Also, they're not your friend. Like, do not try to sneak people in. Someone had their mother sleeping over for quite some time, and it became a huge issue at a later stage. And when a guest does come, even if they're coming in for like a couple of minutes or like an hour, they need to have their ID on hand. Like either their driver's license or their actual ID book or their ID card. Leave that at the front desk. They have to sign in, and then at 10 o'clock, they have to sign out. So if you have a guest coming over during the week, they have to be gone by 10 p.m. So it is very tricky, and it is kind of like res. But I mean, for the cost you're paying and for the safety and for the views that you have, I don't think it's the most terrible thing on the planet.
Thank you so much, Doc, about that. Um, So we are now getting to the part that students like the salary. So can you please tell us how much do you earn at CMG? Is it inclusive of any extra income or any allowance? Do you have any rural allowance or you don't? Like how much do you guys get paid?
Okay, cool. So CMJAH is a metro hospital in like central Johannesburg. So we don't qualify for the rural allowance at all. The salary, like I've explained before, I don't know what the salary is excluding doctor's quarters because I've stayed in doctor's quarters the whole time. And the salary does go up around April every single year, depending on the salary increase that's decided on by the trade unions and such. But at the moment, our salary is quite it's 2,000 Rand more than I was earning in first year. So the current salary, I think, is, I need to think about my budget. It's 48,173 Rand for me, but that's because I'd have DQ excluded from that. I think if you put in the DQ cost, which is 1,500 Rand, you're looking at about 49,600. I think that's what most people are getting, but I get 48,100 and so because I stay in doctor's quarters as well.
Um, okay, thank you so much, Doug. Can you please tell us about the quality of life at Simji? How is it? How like the whole thing about the quality of life of you as an intern.
Okay, so this is obviously going to be interdependent depending on what you guys like. If you're for the streets, if you love going out versus if you're a homebody. I am a homebody, so my quality of life is really dependent on myself and my family. My family does stay in Johannesburg. I think I live 30 minutes from Simja. I just chose to live in doctor's quarters because of the convenience of being able to work, like walk to work and being so close to work every day. But the quality of life is really great if you are someone that wants to go out, if you are someone that wants to experience Johannesburg, you're quite central. You have access to so many malls. Like Johannesburg has so many places to go. Um, there's tons of malls. There's always events happening. There's always concerts and things going on. There's tons of restaurants. You're very close to Braamfontein if you like the student life scene. I like getting my hair done every now and again. And again, I'm super close to Braamfontein, which is so much cheaper than having to go to like Sandton to get my braids done because I'd be paying 1,500 Rand for something very basic. So if you're a girl that likes to get your hair done, likes to get your nails done, Braamfontein is right here. It's very convenient. It's a 30 Rand Uber if you don't feel safe enough to drive. That's all there. There's always stuff happening in Joburg. Like there's always festivals and music events and concerts and restaurants to visit. If you like food, if you like treating yourself to a nice meal, Sandton, Rosebank, the areas around them as well is really great. I think a lot of towns have restaurants in the malls, but there's a lot of standalone restaurants and like really niche places to go in Joburg, which is really cool. You're also not that far from Pretoria. So Pretoria has its own scene that you can go to, lots of restaurants, lots of things to see. It's not like Cape Town in the sense that you're not going to have markets on every street and you're not going to have little boutique things all the time, but there are markets. There's a Four West Farmers Market, the Rosebank rooftop market. There's the, what's this other place? The Prison Break market. Like there's lots of little markets where you can get food and do like niche little boutique shopping and all those sorts of things. You're also really close to the airport. So if you want to fly to another place, you're not driving an hour to or 3 hours to get to an airport. You're right next to the airport, which is quite convenient. Yeah, there's lots to do in Joburg. I think it really is about what you want and what you like really appreciate about life. If you want to pop bottles, you can pop bottles in Joburg if that's what you want. Um, like it's honestly like it's up to you guys what you want to do, what you want to spend your money on. But honestly, Joburg has a lot. It's literally, I say this as nice as I can. It's Cape Town without a beach. So there's lots to do, lots to see, lots to be done, lots of places to go to, and a lot of stuff that is free. So yeah. Let me just say something. And then in terms of making friends, I know a lot of people come here and they don't have colleagues that are here as well. I've made a lot of new friends in terms of the people that were at Wits that are now interns with me. And especially if you stay in doctor's quarters as well, you also make quite a few friends. But a lot of my colleagues, I think only 4 people from my university ended up at CMJAH. And yes, we know each other from varsity, but most of the people that I'm close to are people that studied at other universities. So you're not like cut off from making friends. No one's going to be like obscenely mean to you. Like this is not like a mean girl hospital. You do learn, you get to know people. You do get to go out with your colleagues if you guys want to organize things. Like people are always keen. And I think that's like, it's important to remember you guys are all in your 20s. You're still young enough to do a lot of things. Yeah. And also, don't start relationships with your registrars. I just want to say this: don't hit on your registrars. Don't do it. If they hit on you, run away. You're an intern. No shame. Find love, guys. Do what you want.
Thank you so much, Doug, for that. Doug, there are some questions on the chatbot for you. I'll read them out for you, then you can answer them. So the first question is, good evening. Please ask Mikey if there are doctors courses for ComServe doctors or allow ComServe doctors in the intern doctors courses. Not sure if you got
Okay,
it.
so in terms of this, I'm not too sure about that. There is doctor's quarters for ComServes, but it's not the same as the interns doctor's quarters. So the intern doctor's quarters, it's not just interns that stay here. You have dietitians and physios and radiology interns that also work here. But I think the ComServe issue becomes quite tricky because there are quite a lot of ComServes that do come to CMJAH. So there is another building, which is a much bigger apartment. I think it's like a 1 bedroom as opposed to being a studio bachelor flat, where where ComServes can stay. But it's not as nicely renovated. So this doctor's quarters was very recently renovated. Like you see the videos, like the bathroom is all like green, like gray tile and nice toilet. Like it's all recently renovated. I don't think that the other building is as nicely renovated, but it is available. You can apply for it, but I don't think you're guaranteed a place as much as you are sort of guaranteed a spot in internship. Yeah.
Thank you, Doc. Another question says, can you please ask Dr. Mikey about the safety at Alexandra and Hillbrook clinics? Have there been any incidents for interns working there?
Okay, so Alex and Hilbert are actually pretty safe. So they both have security staff working outside and inside the clinic. There was an incident, not at Alexandra Clinic specifically, but at the garage close by, where an intern, I think, went there to fill up her car and then she was hijacked. I think that was the story. But for that reason, I think it happened like 3 or 4 years ago. But because of that, we don't do overnight calls at Alexandra anymore. So you only do day shifts on weekends, and then you do not do overnight calls as interns. At Hillbrow, you can still do overnight calls as interns, but it's because like there's police station quite close by and there's security staff inside the hospital. There hasn't been any incidents that I've known of, and I did 6 months there. There weren't any incidents last year that we're too worried about. It is quite safe for the doctors because there are security staff stationed at the entrance of the hospital, at the entrance of the emergency department, and also like near the ED, like on either side of the ED. So if there is like an emergency, an uncontained patient, a drunk patient, like they will stop them before they can get you. Yeah, and there's even like by the bathrooms, there'll be a doctor or a security guard stationed near the bathrooms. So you never feel like completely unsafe, which is really good.
Okay. Another question says, do you get to perform any procedures during any of the rotations, or are the reg given preference?
Okay, so I think it depends on the kind of procedure that you're talking about. So in terms of obs and gynae, the HPCSA does require you to do cesarean sections. CMJAH is quite a tricky place because the patients we see are like previous Caesar times 3, denying or like declining vaginal delivery, or like it's always weird cases like preeclamptics that need babies taken out very quickly, or like antepartum hemorrhage. So the procedures you do are limited to how sick the patients are. You do get your Caesars done. If you are very keen to cut, if you're very keen to learn how to do cesarean sections, you do learn a lot in obstetrics, and you do get to do that. In terms of internal medicine, you can do CVP. They do try to get everyone to do at least one CVP in their internal medicine time. And because you're on call with registrars, you do kind of see them do it, so that by the time you have to do your own, you do learn how to do it properly. You can do BMATs as well. I know at some hospitals they're done in theatre. We do them at the bedside. So bone marrow and trephine's you can do yourself. What other procedures do we do? In pediatrics, you can do most things except for like put in a CVP, because the pediatric doctors don't even do that. They ask the pediatric surgeons to do that. So you do get to do a lot of stuff with the pediatric patients. You do all the bloods and all those things and the drips and stuff. So it's not so tricky. And if you do ask, you can intubate. You can intubate the neonates, and you can give them their surfactant via the intubation. So if you are interested in neonates and you do show initiative, they do like to teach you how to do that sort of stuff. And then in ED and in FAMED is where you kind of learn a lot of the skills that you think that you're set back on. So you intubate a lot in ED. If you have a resus, you can lead the resus because they do trust you. And even as an intern, like if you are confident in resussing, if you have your ACLS and your BLS and you want to resus and you want to lead the resus, you can do that. Like no one's going to fight you about it. They really do like people that take initiative. And then you do suture a lot, a lot in second year internship. You don't suture much in surgery because it's all registrars and it's very niche, high level patients. But in FAMED, you suture everything. You suture ears, you suture noses, you suture lips, you suture faces, arms, backs, whatever. Like you learn how to use every single type of suture. You don't have to use chromic because we see so much trauma that you just become so accustomed to it. So you know how to clean a wound, suture it up, and send the patient home, which is a skill I never thought I would learn, but it's really essential if you're in South Africa and you need to go to ComServe in a very rural place. You have to know how to suture eventually, and you learn it quite a lot when you work at the clinics that we work at in second year.
Okay, thank you so much, Doug. I don't know if you can see the questions on the chat box. If you can see them, can you please go quickly through them and then, yeah, can you see them?
Yes, I can.
Yeah,
They asked about foundation, Alexandra. I answered the question about sleepovers. I think I asked about procedures.
yeah,
Sleepovers. Someone asked about the punishment for guests sneaking in. So I can tell you this from personal experience. I tried to sneak my boyfriend in and it was not very good for me. And I had to write a formal report at the security office about how I tried to sneak someone in. Very, very demeaning, not a great time in my life, but I learned that I will never sneak anyone else into the building. They're not always so mean. I think it was just I caught them on a bad day, but do not try to sneak guests in. It's not worth it. Just, yeah, do your own thing. Miss Pillay asked, is the 48K basic and then overtime is added on? So no. So I have one of my pay slips here. I don't have my payslip, but I get my payslip printed every single month because I need access to that. So the 48,000 is inclusive of your overtime, and it's inclusive of your like phone allowance, that whole thing. So how it works is that your basic salary is about 30,000, if I'm not mistaken. Then on top of that, you earn about 16 or 18,000 in overtime for calls and that. You earn about, I think it's like 1,000 or something for like the phone allowance. I think it's like 14,000, like the phone NP cash allowance, whatever that means. It's the phone allowance and those things. And then from that, they do the deduction. So they deduct about 16,000, which is tax, which is basically your entire overtime, which makes me quite sad when I think about it like that. But about 16,000 rand, I think now it's about 18,000 because the salary's gone up, goes to tax. So it's payee tax. And then the deductor's quarters comes off of that. So the 48,000 is after everything has been taken off, including your overtime. something about, I'm not sure, you guys probably have financial advisors and we'll discuss this with you at some point, but if you start internship within the first 2 months of the year and you've never had a job before, even if you had a job, probably not earning that much money, the first 2 months of the year kind of count as a single financial year. So what happens is that when the tax rebate season comes, you get a really big tax rebate in about June, because they have technically taxed you in January and February as though you were earning 48,000 Rand a month for 12 months when you only were earning it for like 2 months. So I think a lot of people got a tax rebate of about 27,000 Rand in like June of last year, which is great. Like, honestly speaking, people bought Apple Watches. People did a lot with that money. I personally bought my ticket to see Taylor Swift, and I bought my flight ticket to see Taylor Swift, and I saw Taylor Swift this year. So it's a really big chunk of money. Get a financial advisor if you don't know what to do with it, or just think about it a bit. But just make sure that when you do submit your tax returns, you do note and make sure that they like don't tax you inappropriately, because that 27,000 Rand, it should be auto deducted and it should automatically come to you. But if you're worried, just make sure that you do get that rebate, because it is a tax problem that does come about. But yeah, so just money to look forward to, use it wisely, spend it wisely. How soon are you allowed to move into doctor's quarters? So we got our doctor's quarters keys, I think, on the 28th of December last year, because they have like an introductory session with all the interns. I think it's around the 28th, 29th of December. You had to bring 500 Rand in cash as like a deposit for the keys. And then you give them the key, the cash, and then you can choose the room. But like, it's very much like a Hunger Games cornucopia. So like there's all the keys and then you kind of like rush, but you don't know what number you're picking out. So initially I picked a room that was on like the 3rd floor, and I burst into tears because I was worried about cockroaches and worried. I think it was 1st floor, and I was really worried about cockroaches. I was worried about all these things. And then like I cried and I begged and I like, you know, did my little dainty performance, and I got a room on the 7th floor, which is very good. But they have rooms in all sorts of areas. You give your 500 Rand deposit on the day, and then on the 28th they give you your keys. So by like the 30th and 31st, we moved in our furniture already, which was really nice. So because it happens over New Year's as well, it's quite tricky to buy a bed because it's like weekend time and stuff. And you do your first call, like the first call start on the 1st of January. So I wasn't on call the 1st of January. I was on call the 2nd of January. So I had to have a bed by like the 3rd of January because I'd be post-call and I needed somewhere to sleep. But they do let you move in a good few days before the year starts, which is really nice. Okay, post-call, pre-call. These are dependent on the rotation that you're on. I'll tell you for first year, in internship or like in pediatrics, internal medicine, and obstetrics, it's about 10 o'clock. That's post-call. In obstetrics, you also get pre-call if you're on obstetrics call, which is quite nice. You're on pre-call from 8 o'clock to 4, and then at 4 o'clock your call starts and you leave at about 10 o'clock the next day. And then in surgery is the one rotation, because you start so early, you start at 6:30 in the morning. Your post-call is also at, it's not 6:30. Yeah, it's not 6:30 in the morning. So your post call is also at 6:30, because then the next intern was arriving to hospital by the time that you are done. So you leave when the next intern comes in, which is really nice. Do you feel like the work and patient load is bearable? So it is dependent on the rotation. I think pediatrics, definitely bearable. Internal medicine does become quite a bit quite overwhelming. And I say this because of the dynamic that we have with our seniors. It is not really much of a teamwork environment. It's kind of like they give the intern a list of work to do, and then the intern needs to try their best. And if they're struggling, they can ask for help. But it's not like a, we will help you first and then leave system, because they are registrars, they are medical officers, they do have teaching and stuff to get to in the day. So they do have their own schedules, but it does become a bit overwhelming if you are the only intern in a department and you have 2 pages worth of ward work to get through. So this is why I say like making relationships with your fellow interns is really important, because like good relations, especially because then you have someone that can help you when you are in a tight spot. And then similarly, when they're in a tight spot, you can help them out as well. My best rotation and why. At the moment, it's still pediatrics, but I think it was really because of the team and the seniors that I worked with. The babies are also just really cute. I love a good baby. Babies are so charming. I don't like kids, but the babies and neonates were adorable. They have like the funniest poses and the cutest poses. And in pediatrics, the kids are also really nice. Like there's no bad child in pediatrics. And the doctors are really nice. They're very kind. The teaching is really good. And they really do like to get to know you. Like, unless you're an absolutely terrible intern who doesn't pitch up for work or pitches up 5 hours late, doesn't do any work, they are generally quite nice people. And they really do try to get to know you as an individual. And they try to really bring out the best in you. So pediatrics, 100%. The worst rotation and why? Surgery, I can't elaborate. I don't want to get fired. But surgery. Also, I'll say this. I used to think that I wanted to be a surgeon for a very long time. And then I did surgery at this hospital. And I don't think it's just surgery at this particular hospital. I think it's surgery in a lot of areas, but I just never experienced surgery like this. And it really has changed how I feel about surgeons as a whole. I think that surgery is quite a taxing department. I think that everyone from the seniors down can be really tough on the registrars, and then for the registrars are tough on the interns. And it is quite an overwhelming time. And unless you have a really strong spirit, I think it's very difficult to see that and see people treat people quite horribly and want to stay in that department. So that's just my personal opinion. There are better places that have much nicer surgical departments. If you like surgery, I wouldn't recommend coming to CMJAH because you won't really get to cut and you won't really get experience in that domain. But yeah, it's a great hospital otherwise. I just don't particularly like the surgical department. And then words of wisdom for a prospective intern. I don't know, guys. Have fun, develop hobbies, make friends. Yeah, it's a good place. It's not a terrible place. Sorry if I missed it. Is CMJAH your first choice? Yes. Yes, it was my first choice. I chose it for family reasons. And I will be quite honest with this. I chose it for family reasons. I think my dad was turning 60 last year, so I wanted to be in the area. Also, it was 30 minutes from home and the apartment was really nice. Like, those are like my top 3 reasons. I had experienced the hospital as well, so I knew it was clean. I knew that it was very well kept, and I knew that it was central Johannesburg, so it wouldn't be too far from a lot of things. I didn't pick it for any particular department, and I don't know if there is a particular department that anyone's really interested in that they'd like more information on, but I didn't pick the hospital for a particular department. I picked it purely because of the location, because I knew it was a well-kept, very clean hospital, close to home, close to family. And that's the thing for internship. Like, if you can, I think try stay with family or people that know you very well, because it can be really tough. And internship is really, really tough. And if you don't have good support networks, it can be like a thing of you pulling teeth for 2 years, basically. Yeah. Do I feel like I'm adequately prepared for ComServe? Yes, I do. I think at the end of first year, I didn't really. Luckily, I ended my first year with pediatrics. So I had a good experience there, and I felt very good in terms of pediatrics, neonates. I knew how to handle neonates and a peds child. But in terms of general skills, I felt quite undertrained. But after second year, especially after family medicine, I learned quite a lot. And I think I learned how to deal with really the basic stuff that most people come to a hospital for. Like in internship and first, you're not really treating a cold and a flu, but that's like your bread and butter by the time you get to ComServe. You also know how to treat much more complex things. You learn how to deal with people that have like social issues and more complex issues than just, oh, my tummy is sore, and you also learn how to approach problems with the system. So a woman that comes in with PV bleeding and is pregnant is not just miscarriage. Like, you have a system. You can say, okay, based on the type of bleeding, based on my PV that I've done, based on this and this and this, I can say it might be an ectopic. It might be just what kind of miscarriage it might be. Like, you learn quite a lot. And I think second year does prepare you quite a lot more for internship or for ComServe than first year does. How certain is one to get a spot in DQ? Is it true that interns are not afforded the opportunity to be hands-on as interns at Barra? Okay, so I'll answer these 2 questions. DQ, quite easy to get a spot in. I was quite anxious that I wouldn't get a spot initially, but it was like, there was like 20 of us waiting for a room and we all got a spot. Like, it wasn't difficult to get a key. You just had to have your deposit on the first day. And then also the thing about DQ is that they place the doctors before they place dietitians, physios, and anyone else, basically. So they try to give the intern doctors a spot first, and then afterwards they give the leftover rooms to the other specialties. But there are people that moved into doctors' quarters like midway through the year. So there are still rooms available later on. Like, it's not like they completely ran out and you're never going to have a room. And then in terms of hands-on, in terms of Barra, so Barra, I will say this is a place I did not want to go, no matter how close it was. I think it's even closer to home than CMJAH is. But Barra is a very different type of lifestyle. And I think you have to be prepared for the type of lifestyle you're going to live if you go to Barra. In internal medicine, for example, they have general internal medicine, but an intern alone can have their own 40 patients to deal with on a day, which is why interns in internal medicine work every single day of the week, because they cannot ask someone else to see their 40 patients when that person has their own 40 patients to see. And also in terms of obstetrics and gynecology, for example, they cut 30 or so Caesars in internship. We cut maybe 10 because that's what the book requires you to do. I will be very honest with you. I know for myself as a person, the person that I was when I started internship, if I had gone to Barra, I probably would have quit my job 2 months in. And that's purely because I just know what I can take and what I'm willing to take on. And I just did not think that the kind of fast-paced, constantly moving, extremely strenuous environment that Barra may be for some interns is what I wanted for myself. A friend of mine is at Barra now. She told me that on her first day, 2 people quit before 12. And the one person came back like 3 days later. He just said he needed time to collect himself. But again, it's about what you're willing to handle. The doctors do like to make a comparison like, oh, but my interns at Barra do so much more. And my interns at Barra can do this and this and this. And I always say to them, I am not an intern at Barra, and I did not choose that life for a reason. You don't have to be an intern that wants to go to Barra. Barra is very hard to work at. And unless you like trauma, unless you like the fast-paced life, unless you really, really love internal medicine and want to see 20 patients a day by yourself, I wouldn't recommend Barra. But again, I've never worked there. And also the interns that work there, by the time they're in second year, they're having a much better time than us because their second year departments are a lot nicer to some degree than the CMJAH departments. But they also don't really complain because it's kind of one of those things of like, you have to get through the really tough parts of Barra to really enjoy the beautiful parts of it. I didn't want to get through the tough parts. Objectively speaking, I'm sorry, that's my personal opinion. But yeah, if you want trauma, if you want experience, if you want to be more hands-on, you can go to Barra, but do understand that that does come with its own complications, and just ask people about Barra if they would really, really want to do it again. Yeah. Then how competent do you feel in your clinical skills? So I've mentioned that. I spoke about second year. There is a big like stigma against CMJAH and how you are a paper pusher. But like I said, I haven't said this actually, but there is paperwork everywhere. No matter what hospital you go to, there will be paperwork to be done. Even at Barra, there is paperwork to be done. So as much as you are getting clinical exposure, it's also possibly at the expense of you not having time to get through your admin that you might have to do on a day. And I think CMJAH is a good example of really learning critical skills that might necessarily not look great in terms of procedural skill books, but are really great in terms of how to conduct yourself as a doctor. So yes, as an intern, you're booking scans and it is annoying and it's exhausting and it's so frustrating to book 10,000 CTs a day. But you also learn how to present a patient very well in a very concise manner and how to really motivate for a scan. You also learn how, like, what indications you need for a scan. And at some point, you're there presenting a patient and you're like, listen up, doctor, I don't think this patient needs the scan, but I'm going to present them because my reg wants the scan. But you yourself know that there's no indication. You know that the radiologist is going to say, I think you're right, there's no indication. But you also, like, as an intern, develop that clinical reasoning to be able to say, I don't think the scan is necessary, but you can tell me if it is, but I don't think it is. And you know why you're saying that. So you might be really good at cutting as a surgeon, but you might not know why you need a CT. And so you might book CTs for stupid reasons. I, on the other hand, know why you need a CT and will therefore be able to motivate exactly why you need one and why you don't need one. And I think that's a skill that you gain regardless of how much clinical exposure you get. Would I choose it again? Yes. I think what I've gained from CMJAH is a lot more than what I would have gained had I been anywhere else. The other thing is internship is completely relative. Like, I don't have any other experience of internship, so I can't ever say my experience is 10 times better than someone else's, you know? But with that being said, I know that I did not want to go to Rahima Musa for obstetrics and gynecology, and I did not want to go to Barra for internal medicine. So I would 10 out of 10 pick this hospital again. I think that what I've gained from it has been fantastic. The relationships you develop has been great. And I think you also really get to, as an intern, stand out, which you can't see at a lot of places because there are I think if you're in a very physical environment where everyone's doing skills, everyone can learn a skill, right? But I think I like to say CMJAH has a lot of personalities, which it does, but it also allows for your own personality to come through and for your own personality to shine. So if you are someone that really likes and really wants to get into research and you want to get exposure in research, you can make really good friends with your consultant in internal medicine. And like now, as a second year intern, I'm doing a research project with a consultant in internal medicine that I met last year because I simply had the guts to be like, hey, Dr. Zamp, hey, Dr. So-and-so, do you remember me? I was your intern in this department. I would like to do research. Can you help me out? And then they help you out. So it is one of those places where because they have so few interns, I think we get like 50 a year, 53 a year, you do get the opportunity to build relationships with even your seniors. It might not seem easy and they might not seem approachable initially, but you do kind of get to that stage where they become more approachable because they are familiar faces. And yeah, so I do think that I'd rate it 7.5 out of 10. Yeah. And then do we have urology? Yes, we do, but you cannot work in it as an intern because it's the subspecialty of surgery. You can work in it as a ComServe, but I think you can only do like 2 months. And that's only if you get surgery for community service. So yeah, ComServe is a whole different ballgame in terms of CMJAH. But you do have urology and you can be urology ComServe in the department. Cool. I hope I've answered everyone's questions. Yeah, let me mute myself now. I've talked for so long.
I think you have answered everyone's question. I feel like everyone is answered. Thank you so much, Doc. So if they wanted to contact you, how can they find you? Do you have any social media or do you even have any YouTube channel? You know, most of the doctors have YouTube channels now. So if you have any social media account like Facebook, Instagram, you can just write them on the chat box so that they can maybe follow you and then DM you if they want more information about the center.
Okay, cool. So I have Instagram, but I don't really use it. And I have Facebook. I'm more active on it now because I have to apply for ComServe, but I again don't really use it. But it's Maxeke Johannesburg on Facebook if you want to add me there. I also have a TikTok channel. I don't post like super official TikToks, but I do have a series of call reviews from my family medicine time. So if you guys would like to check those out, I think my name is also just Maxeke Johannesburg. I'm not sure what it is on TikTok. I don't want to lie. But I do have some core review videos there. So after a call at South Rand or Alexandra or Hillbrow, I'd make a little video while I'm getting food. And I just explain what the highlights of the call were, what the lowlights of the call were. So if you guys are interested in that, you guys can find me on TikTok. But yeah, all the best, guys. I hope that you guys have all the ICSP information. We did try to get it out there. I am on JUDASA now. I am the Gauteng representative for JUDASA. So do try reach out to your Gauteng or your regional representative, wherever you guys are. There are some frequently asked questions. I hope that you guys have gotten them. If not, I'll send them to Andy there, and hopefully you can send them onto your guys' class group for any more information you guys need about these applications. There's a lot of questions about the P2, P3s, that whole thing. I'll send that to Andy and he can forward that to you guys. But yeah, all the best for internship. I hope that you pick good hospitals. I hope that you're happy with your choices. And I hope that you have a fantastic experience, guys. It's 2 years of your life. It feels really long, but it really goes by in a flash. Like, I can't believe I'm a second year now. And all the best for final exams. You guys have got this. You are so close to the end. Yeah, all the best, guys.
Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you so much. All the best to you too for your ComServe. Also want to thank you for honoring our invite and spare us your time to come and have this talk with us. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much, guys. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Bye.